following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Every day, citizens around the country are faced with new dilemmas. Dilemmas that affect them profoundly. Whether it's injustice, discrimination, falling through the cracks, scandals and cronyism, balances of power, ethics, religious freedoms, state versus citizens, and unfunded mandates, and the list goes on and on and on. Welcome to Speak Up. It's directed at those who have fallen through the cracks, and it gives them a voice. It's your turn to speak up. To stand up and fight back.
Welcome to Speak Up. I'm Kevin Avard, your host. And today we're going to revisit a topic that we visited a while back. And the topic is about reactive attachment disorder. And today I have a guest, Tiffany Hall. Thank you for coming on the show, Tiffany. Tiffany Hall-Linett.
Yes.
Yes. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
We recently, you actually gave us the name of the doctor that came on our show a while back.
Yes. Dr. Beth Barasa.
Yes. And she's very familiar with reactive attachment disorder.
Yep.
Would you mind sharing with our guests what this disorder is briefly?
Sure. Reactive attachment disorder is a disruption in the attachment with the child and their primary caregiver. It typically happens within the first or second year of their life. And so when that happens, when there's a disruption between the caregiver and the child, they are unable to form a bond with another caregiver.
Now, that sounds really politically correct as far as the caregiver. Mm-hmm. The caregiver is mom or dad.
Correct.
Or whoever.
Whoever,
right. Yep. So, you know, if there's something happens, there may be a traumatic thing that happens.
Yes.
or something
Yep.
that interrupts this flow which would naturally occur.
Yes.
And it has lifelong consequences.
Absolutely, yes. Typically, it is only found in children who are either in foster care or adopted. You have a lot of children from over in, say, Ukraine, Russia, with the orphanages.
Right.
A lot of those children are found to have that. And then there are some rare cases that children who are with their biological parents do form this disorder for a multitude of different reasons. It doesn't necessarily mean that the child, the caregiver was abusive to the child or any of that. It just sometimes happens that way. It just really, it's hard. It can be complicated to figure out, especially if it's your biological child, what caused that.
Now, you happen to be a parent that
Yes.
has a daughter that
Yes.
has these symptoms or
Yes.
this syndrome or
She
disorder.
has the disorder, yep.
Right. Tell us a little bit about some of the struggles that you've had dealing with this.
Sure. We didn't find out that Skylar was diagnosed with reactive attachment disorder until she was 9. It does sound like that's late, but it's actually fairly early because it is so difficult to diagnose. It does mimic or mirror other conditions that you or a child could have. So some of the struggles with a child with this disorder are they are not affectionate with their parent. They will be affectionate with any other person, any stranger that comes up to them. They will form like an inappropriate, very close bond or try to hug strangers, anything like that. But they will avoid their own person or parent at any cost. They will lie. They will steal. They will do things very under the radar, like manipulative. They typically target the mother. It's not usually something that a father or other family members will see. And a lot of times people tend to think that the mothers are hostile, have anger problems because they don't see the same things that the mother is experiencing, because a lot of times it's really confined to the home. the behaviors, and there's destructive behaviors, there's hoarding, food issues.
I was going to ask you about that. Now, they'll like, I think in our conversation in the past, she would hide food.
Correct.
By the bed or something like that?
She would steal food out of our kitchen in the middle of the night. She wouldn't sleep. She would stay up for days, and she would steal food out of our kitchen, and she would hoard it under her bed. I mean, anywhere she could find it. She was doing a lot of strange things with the food.
I mean, you have a regular diet, right?
Right. Oh, absolutely. Yes. She was food seeking, as a matter of fact. So it was kind of it. She has a combination of where she would abstain from food, where she would like almost starve herself, and then on the other hand, she would food seek. So her weight fluctuated quite regularly for us. So she would be like very overweight, and then she would be smaller. And so it was hard to pinpoint what was going on.
When did you start noticing these anomalies?
Well, we always noticed something was kind of off with Skylar, and we did begin seeking help and treatment for her when she was 4 years old. And at that time, she was diagnosed with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and she also had ADD, ADHD, and she had juvenile anxiety.
Wow.
Which is at 4 years old. And so because those conditions can mask and also mirror reactive attachment disorder, they didn't diagnose her with that until she was 9, and it took me to sending her to a specialist to get that.
So how many doctors did you have to go through? How many counselors did you have to go through to really pinpoint what was really the problem?
When we started when she was 4 years old, we started, I'd have to say we went through in excess of 10 or 11 therapists and doctors before we found Create, which is where she goes currently now. And she's been going to Create for probably about 5 years.
Prior to that, let me just interject. Did you ever start, thinking, well, is it me?
Oh, absolutely.
How did you struggle with that?
It was very difficult. Because nobody else understood or really saw a lot of the things. And a lot of people would say it's just regular kid stuff. And I'm like, no, I don't think it is. It's not regular. And it's hard to explain. It's hard, because people don't understand unless they're actually in it. Everything with Skylar there was always an ulterior motive. There was, she was always manipulating to try to get her outcome, the one that she wanted. There was a control issue between her and I. She wanted to be in charge. She wanted to control everything. And if we did not, or if I did not do or allow her to have what she wanted, then she would retaliate.
So she wasn't just this typical spoiled kid that, well, she didn't get her way, so there's something way beyond there. There's a
she would plot and plan for days at a time. She would stay up all night, plotting and planning revenge, retaliation against us, me mainly.
What would be a typical way that she would do that?
Stealing my things. She would steal my things. She would destroy property or destroy things in her room. Anything that she could find to really push my buttons. She would lie a lot, hide her homework, and say that the teacher didn't give it to her, or she would blame others for things and pit me against them. So it was more of a psychological warfare, almost in essence, between her and I, and sometimes still now, because she still suffers from reactive attachment disorder. So now it's a lot different, but she still has a lot of the same issues.
Did she do this to other people as well?
Absolutely. In her class and school, there are millions of emails documented about all of the problems that they were having in school with her, stealing from peers, stealing their food, stealing things from their desk, stealing from the school store, leaving class, or lying to get out of class to go to the nurse's office. I think at one time there was like 150 times that she had left or gotten out of class to go to the school nurse.
Well, I didn't do it that much, but I did do that as a kid.
Well, right, and you would
Right?
think, but you would think after, after so many times, that would be like a little bit of a red flag to the teacher
Right.
to say, hey, this is not right.
So when you first got this final diagnosis, and was it the first time you've ever heard of it?
Yes, when she was diagnosed with it at 9, it was the first time I had ever heard of reactive attachment disorder. I had to take her to a pediatric neurologist to have her evaluated and explain to her everything that was going on in the house.
Did the physician know about this syndrome?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Once I explained everything to her, and we had seen her a few times, and also filled out a bunch of paperwork and forms for the school to fill out and stuff like that. She came back I was still in the room with her, and she's like, I'm telling you, or I believe that she has reactive attachment disorder, and this is why, and this is what it is.
Just before we get into that, one of the things that, obviously some people are going to say, you know what, it's either a spoiled kid, you didn't even spank them.
Absolutely, yeah, they do.
You probably had a discipline problem, or here's another syndrome that
Yes.
we're going to get benefits for. These are your typical
Yep.
things, but this is something real.
Absolutely, and we don't get any benefits or anything of that nature for Skylar. She has a multitude of different disorders that are real, and she has been tested by numerous professionals to receive these diagnoses.
Were these covered by insurance?
Not all of them, no.
Right. So you're not doing this for fun or to get benefits.
Oh, absolutely not.
I just want to hit that
Yep.
right up.
Nope. I had to stop working to maintain her and manage her care and her and school, basically, what was going on with the school.
How did you take care of yourself while you were going through this?
Well, I also sought counseling, and I had a good support system, and my husband's family was, very supportive of us and the things that we're going through. My mother was very supportive. My sister has similar issues, so this is something I'm kind of familiar with. I kind of grew up with this, and so I recognized.
Can you inherit this? Can this be passed on?
It's not a genetic condition, no, but you can be predisposed, and if you have, if you have things going on in your family that can be passed. I don't know how to explain it. It's not genetic, no, but you can.
Something can trigger it.
Yes,
And,
I guess is
a
the
traumatic event or
Absolutely.
something either at an early age. Does it happen in the later years as well?
No, not as far as I'm aware. It's only something that will happen in the very beginning,
Right.
within the first or second year.
So what was the first year like working with Create? Was it?
The first year that we started with Create, again, we did not know she had reactive attachment disorder, and we were working with a different therapist, actually the owner of Create, Stephen Drozer, and he helped us a lot. He started the testing for Skylar because he saw that there was all of this stuff going on, and we just could not pinpoint what exactly it was because, there was just so many different things that it could be because they all kind of mimic each other, all the symptoms.
Right.
So like PTSD, for example, has a lot of similar symptoms as the reactive attachment disorder. So it can be very difficult if your child has more than one condition to actually pinpoint what it is.
And so if you have multiple symptoms or you have the ADHD and React, that's got to be pretty hard to diagnose.
It is very hard, yes, it is.
Well, obviously we have the mimicking, but then you've got this and you've got this and you've got this. I mean, you got long hair. I'm surprised you still have hair.
Well, yes. I mean, it's been a long, hard road with Skylar. It has definitely been difficult, but I feel like, in the end, that the end will justify the means, so to speak. There is progress with her,
right.
And as opposed to before, there wasn't. And we did have a very kind of dire prognosis for her the rest of her life. So things are a little bit different now.
What are the things that you're seeing improve now that she's in treatment?
Well, she is not retaliating against us as she normally would with vindictive behavior. She doesn't, she will do her chores and like participate in normal routine stuff. She's showering, she's taking care of herself, whereas before she wouldn't do any of that stuff.
So, as a parent,
Yes.
I want my child to love me back. And I would imagine that this has got to take on a real personal thing with you because you want her to love you.
Right.
Is she capable of that?
I believe she is. I think it's difficult. She doesn't feel the same way as the rest of everybody else. I think now we have been able to reach her, whereas before, when she was first diagnosed with reactive attachment disorder, I was also told that she did not have a conscience. And so that was very scary for us to comprehend, because people who don't have consciences are not people you really want to be
Let's
around.
face it, let's call it what it is. They're mass murderers.
Right, they're serial killers, and they are sociopaths. And so that was very scary for us at first, and I didn't want to believe that about her, but it was also, something that I didn't really have a choice at the time, because seeing everything that we were seeing and then hearing the things that she was thinking about, planning, plotting to do, she has been violent, she has been aggressive, she's been hospitalized 4 times so far in psychiatric facilities. Each time has been longer and more intensive. She has threatened to harm. She has threatened to kill. We have an alarm on her door, so we hear her when she comes out of her room. We have locks on our cabinets, and she cannot be left alone unsupervised.
Are you in fear of your life at any time?
At the time, not now, no, but before, yes, I was scared. I was scared for my son more than I was scared for me. The way I looked at, I'm sure most parents who have a child who suffers from any type of emotional disorder that causes them to be violent, most of us don't fear so much for our lives as we fear for others.
Sure.
And so my concern was my son, because I have a younger child that also lives in the house. And we tried to keep him as separate as possible from what was going on and, sometimes what does go on with Skylar. And my other concern was for the kids in her class.
Okay, so this really kind of sets the stage for, okay, well, geez, my gosh, you've had it hard, and you've got counselors. It looks like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Hopefully, maybe she'll grow out of this. Is that a possibility, or is it a lifelong treatment?
It depends, really. It depends on the severity. Skylar does have a very severe case. She has one of the more severe cases in this area.
Right. Are there other cases? Is there a percentage of children that have this?
Well, I don't know. I'm sure there is a percentage, but I can't really say what the percentage is. I do know, that if left untreated, it can develop as you age. It changes into something else. It's called a borderline personality disorder. So it can change into that or morph into that.
Right.
Bipolar, manic depressive, all of those things. And I think there's a few other, obviously, sociopathic, narcissist. Right. Those all can factor in. And it can be difficult as they get older, because it is then, and will become literally a fight for control.
Right.
Between you and them.
So now we have this situation that you've been living with.
Yes.
And you've diagnosed it, you've identified the problem, you have a strategy.
Yes.
Now you go to school, and there's a proven case here that your daughter has this. Mm-hmm. And there was a struggle with the school.
Oh, absolutely. I approached the school before Skylar started school. Okay. Skylar started school in 2007. I went to the school in 2006 because there were concerns. She was in a private daycare who ran a full-day kindergarten program, because at the time in 2006, Manchester did not offer full-day kindergarten, and I was working at the time, so I needed full day. Mm-hmm. So she was in their program, and they had a lot of concerns. She had behavioral flow charts every day which meant like her day was broken up into 1 hour. And so each hour they would write down what was happening, basically, so what the problems were.
Right. And she was being monitored very closely.
Right. And so I approached the school district, or the school that she would be attending, went to the principal, explained everything to him, and again, at the time she didn't have reactive attachment disorder, but she did have PTSD, the ADD, ADHD, and the anxiety. And at that time, she was eligible for special ed, but I did not know that, and they did not share. So when I approached the principal and explained all of her diagnoses and what was going on, bringing the concerns to the preschool to him, he said to me...
Who?
James Paul, Mr. James Paul, was the principal at Highland Goffs Falls.
Okay.
He told me that eventually she would probably grow out of her problems, and that what he would do is place her in the readiness program, which is, it's kind of like, it's a year program before first grade for kids that are not mature enough emotionally.
Tiffany, did he meet her before coming up with this diagnosis?
No.
So you showed all the information, and does he have a clinical psychologist background, or he's a principal?
Right.
Right.
And
not that that's nothing, but I mean, obviously you've seen a lot of cases.
Exactly. And I didn't know enough to know any better at the time. So I took what he said as like he knew what he was talking about.
But the first thing that we're going to look at is the fact that you told all these symptoms,
yes.
and he said, well, this can, maybe you grow out
She'll
of this.
grow out of this, yep.
Instead of offering a certain class.
A special ed, instead of offering special education services, which she was eligible for.
All right. So let me just ask a crappy question. Does that cost the school extra money to send them to the special classes?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Let's continue.
So she went to school in 2007, and they placed her in a regular first grade class. And so I went to the school and fought with the principal and said, that's, you told me you would put her in readiness. She's not emotionally, she's just not ready for first grade. So he did agree to put her back into the readiness program. Mm-hmm. And all that year, we had nothing but problems with Skylar. And
what's a typical problem?
Again, she was stealing. She was stealing from the kids, stealing food, causing fights between her peers and herself. She has no social skills, so she has a lot of social problems, manipulating them, bossing them, taking over kind of thing. She's the biggest kid in the class, so she was a bully, taking their food basically from them,
right.
And she, again, not doing the work, and she's in readiness, so I mean, it's not really a lot of work anyways. And the teacher was expressing her concerns. They had a daily book that came home. It was called the Agenda Book. And they would send home that book every day, and it would list, if there were problems, if, what their color was. If they had a good day, they had green. Yellow meant not good day. Red meant, well, you got a phone call if they had red.
And you had the phone calls.
Right.
And so you brought these concerns to the principal again.
And we had a meeting. We had a big meeting because I was then requesting for help or for more for her.
Right.
And at that meeting, Mr. Paul, the teacher for the emotionally disturbed children was there, and I also brought my mother-in-law with me, and so we sat at the meeting, and the teacher retracted everything that she said and told me that I had misunderstood everything, and that there were no problems and there was nothing wrong, and then the principal told me that I needed to really think about what I was doing, because I could, in essence, be damaging her by trying to place her into a special emotionally disturbed classroom, because she could still yet grow out of her problems. And did I really want to do that to her, because this would follow her for the rest of her school career?
Okay, so was the teacher a psychologist, or
Nope.
Did she have a background in any type of
Nope.
clinical? Nothing. So, first red flag is, do you think that the principal got to the teacher and they discussed saying, look, we got a problem here, but we don't want to create a mess because we have a budget?
Right.
Now, I'm leading on the question because these are the things that I'm tossing through in my mind.
They did not want to provide her with any services.
Okay.
They
When she retracted, did you say, "Wait a minute,
Yes, I
I've
did.
got all these red colors
Yes.
and these phone calls, and you're saying there's not a problem?"
Yes, I did. I specifically called her out on that in front of everybody.
And how did she? Well, how did she explain that you misinterpreted this?
She didn't. She just repeated what she said. You've misunderstood what I meant. And I said, I don't understand how I could misunderstand that. How do you misunderstand all of this right here?
So you're going through all this trauma back at home. You're going through all this, oh my God, what is it? What is it? What is it? Oh, maybe you can help me. Instead, well, she'll grow out of it. She'll grow out of it. This is a problem that we don't want to deal with.
Right. And the way that they responded, and plus me not knowing very much about the school systems and, services and what have you, it made me think that there was nothing really that they could do, like that they were doing what legally they could, because I didn't know enough about anything to know that, that they don't do anything that they're supposed to do typically unless you force them.
So let's move it forward a little bit. What happened after that? So you're getting, well, you misinterpreted, there's not a problem, she'll grow out of it.
So this goes on for until her second year, until second grade. So back and forth from readiness to second grade. We are meeting every year, fighting with them over the problems that I know that she's having, the struggles, for academics. She's very far behind, not making any gains at all academically. And then in the second grade, everything kind of came to a head because I was tired of fighting with them. And so I was seeking help outside of the school district. And so that is when we found CREATE. And Stephen referred us to the neurologist, who then made the diagnoses that she had the reactive attachment disorder, and requested that the school begin testing for all of her problems.
Okay, so was the school, you brought this, you got the diagnosis, you got the referral.
Yes.
And it looked pretty conclusive.
Yes.
So now, if she's already diagnosed, why does the school have to do more testing?
It is their rules.
Okay.
They have to evaluate within.
Okay, and it's written in some kind of code or something
Yes,
to that?
there's a special education handbook.
There is?
Yes.
And it's in that handbook?
Yes.
Okay. You know what page?
Not off the top of my
Just
head.
By this time,
But
usually you're pretty much the expert.
Yeah, but I do.
So you confront them and say, look, on such and such a page, there's this rule that says that you have to test.
Yes.
Would you please test?
Yes.
And what was the response?
They agreed to test her. They agreed to start the testing, and it was inconclusive. That they could not, that they saw that there was a problem or struggles, but it was not enough to warrant a code, which is what you get when you have a child who is identified with a special or with emotional disturbance or anything like that, who receives any type of special education. They have to be coded first.
I thought they passed that stuff out like candy.
Nope.
The coding. So
well, they do as long as it doesn't require an IEP.
What is an IEP?
It's an individualized educational plan. And so at the time, they were willing to give her a 504 plan. And
so now you get the IEP, and you get that nebulous, inconclusive type of thing. You're out there somewhere.
Oh no, we just have a 504 plan at this time. They wouldn't give me the IEP at first because they said there was nothing that they could diagnose. They couldn't code what her academic or learning problems were, and which made me angry. And so I was then directed to have her evaluated by a neuropsychologist, which is a completely different psychologist, and they do a very extensive and intense testing process. It takes about 3, sometimes more, 3 to 4 to 5 days.
Who paid for that?
I did, out of my pocket. First. I paid for it. And then when I had that test done, I also retained an attorney.
So what did that test bring?
That he agreed that she did have definitively, without a doubt, the reactive attachment disorder.
So you have two separate organizations that said, professionals,
Yes.
that said she has reactive attachment disorder.
Yes.
So now you're going back to the principal. Okay, this isn't inconclusive anymore, is it?
Right. And they stall, which is when I got the attorney.
Okay, what do you mean they stall?
They basically just didn't really do anything. They said it's hard to explain.
All right, so your child's
run
going
around.
You're getting the runaround, but in the meantime, your daughter has to go to school.
Yes.
So she's going to school.
Yes.
You've gone through both the professionals. You've got the conclusive evidence. You brought it before the school, and what did they say? Here's another paper to fill out?
They said we have to all agree on everything. Like whether or not they don't have to take that report. Mm-hmm. So that's the other thing that you don't know, that they can refuse to take in the report from the outside evaluator.
That they sent you to.
Right. Well, they didn't send me to. They suggested that I have her tested more extensively.
Did they recognize that institution that you sent them to?
Oh, yes, yes. They
so
totally,
it wasn't like it's a fly-by-night. It's not...
oh, no.
Right,
no.
so you have two different places. You've gone to them. She's going to the school. They're not doing anything. What does that mean? Is it like 10 days, 15 days, 30 days, 60 days? Half the school, the next session?
I'd say it's probably around 30 or so, 30, 45 days. They have 45 days to respond anyways.
So there's 45 days into the school year, okay, that she's not getting any type of treatment?
We were well within further into the school year. When she was tested the first time, we were actually, that was in the summer right before 3rd grade, and when I got her to the neuropsychologist, because that is a wait.
Right.
That's a 4, sometimes 6-month wait to get into and that's the other thing. They know that it's going to take you time to get into these places. And so until you get in and you have this test, and then it takes, 4 to 5 to 6 weeks to get the testing results.
Did you go before the school board to talk about this?
No, I didn't know that I could. I didn't know anything about that at the time.
Okay. I'm waiting to hear where this goes.
I just didn't know a whole lot, like I said, and so when this all was going on, I stopped working. Right in that time period, because I started to realize that I was getting the runaround, and I was starting to get angry because I started to read and I started to research and I started to see that there were services that could be provided for her that she needed.
Is there state law that says that you have to be notified of these such services?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
And that's what they utilize. There is no law that I'm aware of that says that they have to tell you.
But once you're aware of it and you bring it before them, do they have to?
Then they have to. Then they have to, yes.
And you did bring it before them?
Yes. And again, it was a big fight. I mean, literally. You
had to actually bring in an attorney, though?
Yes, I did.
And how did that work for you?
It worked well. When I brought her in, they agreed to code her with other health impairment. And
not the IEP?
And they gave her an IEP.
Okay.
And they gave her an IEP. They agreed to code her with other health impairment. And then they also agreed to move her to a different school that had a emotionally disturbed, an EBD classroom. Okay. For her.
Is that just one local school, or
There is only one school in Manchester that has such a classroom. Okay. There are other schools in Manchester that have programs for emotionally disturbed, but not a self-contained classroom, which is what Skylar was placed in.
Okay.
When they agreed to all of that, they also agreed to place her into a summer program, Girls Inc., which, again, I didn't know enough to know that she shouldn't have been placed in that program because of her disorders.
She should not have been in there.
No, she should not. It was not suitable for her at all. And it was the catalyst for her next hospitalization.
Do you think that they were thinking maybe she'd be cured by going to this place?
I think they were thinking, give the mom 2 weeks, she'll be happy. They deny, and then they'll give you little things, because they think if you give a little, then that means you'll be happy and you'll kind of go away.
It seems like the bureaucratic mantra, you know, just stall.
Exactly. It is exactly.
It beat you down through attrition, and
Yes.
you'll go away.
Exactly, because parents eventually get frustrated, and that is what they are banking on. They are banking on that after a while, you are going to get tired of the runaround, and they're banking on that you don't have the time, the energy, the resources to figure things out and to get an attorney, like most parents don't.
Right.
They just let it go.
So, in the school's defense, and I'm not. There's hey, we got to survive here. We've got a little budget. We've got to take care of our own. You know, we don't have enough state funding for this, and we don't have the resources. We don't have the special ed, and this could just escalate into such a well, if we do it for one, we're going to have 5. Then then we're not going to be able to give enough attention to the other students. But then, as a parent, you're saying, well, wait a minute. This is state law. You have to educate my child in a reasonable fashion. So. Is there like a regional school for this type of thing, or that where they can take special ed kids to go to one particular school that?
Not in Manchester.
No.
No.
In the region anywhere.
If you wanted to take, and Skylar was actually placed in a school outside of the district at the beginning of this year. We moved her because it didn't work, but. If you want your child, or your child needs to be in a therapeutic, basically is what it is. It's a therapeutic school, therapeutic type program of that nature, you have to go out of district. And they do not want to send out of district. They will avoid that at all costs. Because it costs a lot of money.
To send a child out of district.
Absolutely.
Now, I'm just curious, does Gateway do anything on this level? Gateway Services?
Not that I'm aware of.
I'm just curious. I don't know if that's something that's a peripheral thing.
I'm not familiar with Gateway.
Okay. They're located on Canal Street there in Nashua.
Okay. Yes. No. No, not that I'm aware of.
Right. Obviously, there's, I'm just thinking maybe is that another type of service that they could provide for special needs?
Well, there's a multitude of different programs and services that are offered within New Hampshire, not necessarily all that can help with a child that has reactive attachment disorder.
Right.
And that's the other problem was that Skylar was one of the very few, if probably I think one of the only ones at the time when we started this process that was diagnosed with reactive attachment disorder, and historically, girls don't get reactive attachment disorder.
It's more of a boy thing.
It is a male dominant disorder. So she was a very big, an oddity almost, and they didn't really know what to do with her or for her. And everything that they wanted to do for her was the exact opposite of what she needed. And we had professional providers. I had a psychologist, a psychiatrist, I had an in-home therapist, that they were all part of the school meetings and the IEP team, which after we hired the attorney. I had been assembling these people for years, basically, and they still refused to provide her with the services that were recommended. It was recommended back when Skylar was about 10 or 11 years old, that she needed to be in a residential home for kids.
Well, fast forward us up to date now. So you've gone through this. You've gone through all these from the beginning. You're struggling. You're going through the self-doubt. The growing process. Then you're looking for services, and all of a sudden you're getting a runaround, or apparently a runaround.
Yes.
You have to get an attorney, and then
I have to get another attorney.
Then you have to get another attorney. So fast forward to date. Where have you progressed?
Absolutely. It's sad that it took the fact that we had to get an attorney. It's sad. And then in the end I did everything myself. So I had 2 attorneys, and then I had my last attorney just advising me. I was, asking him for legal advice.
Right.
What should I do? And so I was doing it. So I had to file due process against the Manchester School District. I filed against Webster School, which is the EBD class that she was in, the self-contained class. And then I also filed against Highland because everything started at Highland. And so when I found out the process and what I could do, I researched it all myself. I learned everything, special education laws myself, and I took them for due process, which is, to court basically for school. And then I also filed a complaint with the Office of Civil Rights because they were violating her civil rights.
Which one?
In Boston.
Mm-hmm. No, which civil right?
Oh, her civil rights for free appropriate FAPE, free appropriate education for a child. That's how I saw what they were doing to her. And I went to the Senator Janine Shaheen, her office. I went through them, and they helped me with that. Mm-hmm. They were actually very instrumental in the complaint with the Office of Civil Rights. And so now we were able, because of the due process cases and the fact that I had all of the documentation that I had, and the Office of Civil Rights, we were able to reach a resolution agreement with the Manchester School District, in which they basically provided every single thing that we had been asking for, that they had been refusing up until we went to due process and duked it out.
Do you think prior to this happening that the school was punishing you?
Oh, yes, absolutely. When Skylar was at Webster in her 4th grade year, which was 2011 to 2012, that was the 4th grade year. That was when she first started at Webster. She missed the first half of the year, and she didn't start until January because she had been hospitalized. And I would not agree to send her until we had an IEP and all of her services and everything final, because there was just too much going on with her. And again, she had been in the hospital for quite some time. Mm-hmm. So at that time, up until January, she was at home, and yep. They provided her with a tutor. So,
were you ever afraid that the state was going to come and take your child?
Yes, I'm getting to that. That is when it happened, actually. In 4th grade, when she started, she formed an inappropriate relationship with the teacher, Mrs. Leneve. And even though the teacher was well aware of all of the problems and everything, she was provided with all information about reactive attachment disorder, what she would see, right. What the parents would look like, kind of thing. She still went to Skylar's team. Basically, Skylar was able to manipulate her and get her on her team. Skylar was going to school daily, pitting her and I against each other, telling them that I was beating her and starving her, all of this stuff, and they were not talking to us. We had therapists that were coming in and providing training to their staff mm-hmm. to help deal with Skylar's behaviors. It was another part that was included in our IEP, where they contracted with my providers. They paid them to come in and provide training and help with Skylar, but yet they were not communicating to them or us about these things that she was coming to school saying right. and doing. And then the teacher and I she was a new teacher, first year. She had no business being in that classroom. She didn't know what she was doing. And I have a very blunt way of speaking, and I will tell you if you're doing something wrong with my child. And we had instituted a behavioral modification program specifically for Skylar.
So you've been dealing with this for years, and
yes.
all of a sudden, the teacher, a novice, basically comes in, and she gets caught in this trap.
Yes.
It's her first year, right? She doesn't really know what's going on. And then you worry about social services or health and human services coming in.
Right, because like I said, when all that was going on and there was this alliance basically between her and Skylar.
Part of the syndrome, right?
Right. Yeah. And the principal became involved as well in this. They didn't like me because I was being very vocal about the fact that they were not providing my daughter with the services that she needed. And they were not doing what they were supposed to do by her IEP. So because of that, they were creating problems with Skylar in school, and it was carrying over to home.
Which you didn't need.
And they were not agreeing, even though we had documentation saying that this is what Skylar needed, they were basically saying no, that they weren't going to do this for her because their documentation suggested otherwise, even though I provided documentation to show that theirs was not valid. So it was a big back and forth between us. And so they got mad because, again, I was being vocal, and I had a blog at the time and a public Facebook page called Hope for Skylar that documented all of what we were going through and the fight with the school district and the services, as well as my blog, which was also public at the time because I said so, The Life of a Rad Mom. And and so I was explaining every single thing that was happening, and they found out about it. And so they began to retaliate against us.
In what way?
By not allowing her to, by not giving her services, saying no for no reason, basically saying, you know, that we were wrong and they were right. And then they filed reports against us with DCYF. The first report they filed was in March 22nd.
Did they have a finding?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We were found to be. It was unfounded report. It was based off of, you know,
So they turned you in to DCYF
3 times.
And each time was it an unfounded report?
Well, they didn't respond the first 2 times because they screened it out.
Okay.
The DCYF screened it out as a, you know, hate call, whatever, you know, not something.
It's a school.
But they didn't identify themselves, I guess, or I'm not sure exactly how that worked, but they screened it out.
Were you able to eventually know for sure or prove that it was a school?
Absolutely. I got a copy of the report, and everything was
You could see, you could face your accuser, basically.
Right, which they were not. They were under the impression that that I would never get that information.
Who is they?
The principal and the teacher.
What's their name?
The principal was Christine Martin, or she is the principal at Webster, and the teacher was Kaylee Leneve. And the bus monitor was the first person that she filed the first report.
Well, see, you want these people to, you know, obviously be professional, but you can't be in fear of them turning you in.
Right.
Especially when you've been dealing with this for such a long time.
And they were very much aware of everything that was going on. We shared everything with them. At the time when they made that first report, I didn't have a Facebook page or a blog or anything of that nature. The teacher just did not like me because I would not agree to let them do whatever they wanted to do for Skylar. I was saying, no, this is not what is good for her. This is what she needs.
Are you afraid? But obviously you're on the show right now. I mean, are you worried they're going to continue to retaliate?
Absolutely. Oh, yes. I worry every single meeting that I have for
So
that.
you're still going, what grade is she in now, if you don't mind?
She's in 6th grade.
6th grade. Progress is being made.
Yes, this is the first year that we have seen any type of progress because they are doing exactly what we've been telling them to do.
I'm sure there's teachers there that got to be understanding.
Oh, yes, the last year teacher, Nicole LaValle, she was Skylar's 5th grade teacher. She was instrumental in everything.
Yeah.
She was at Webster, and she was actually the teacher that was supposed to be teaching Skylar in the 4th grade, but she was gone on maternity leave. So when she came back in the 5th grade, or for 5th grade, she reviewed everything. She met with us, and she saw everything. Like, she saw, and she came to the first meeting and said, you know, that this was really going on. And I can still remember my LEA rep, who is they're the ones that sign off on the IEPs, and they're kind of in charge. So because of the fight between what the principal did and everything, the principal would typically be our LEA. But because of the fight and what they did,
Obviously that's not going to work, right?
part of my resolution agreement was that she be removed and not be allowed to have any part in any educational planning for my child. So they brought in Jennifer Freitas, who works for the superintendent office, and she and I had been working together for the whole time, basically. She'd been a part of everything.
Right.
So when we had our first meeting, I'll never forget it, Nicole was validating us, and Jennifer leaned over and said, wait a minute, you mean like she's really doing this stuff? Like this is really happening? And Nicole says,
wow.
Yes,
Quite
absolutely.
the revelation.
Yes, it was.
We got a situation, and now let's deal with it.
Right.
We're going to have to close out the show in a minute or two. So can you end the story a little bit and close the show? How people can contact you, where this is at this point?
At this point right now, Skylar is doing very well because, again, they're providing her with all of the supports and services that have been shown that she needed. And that's why she's doing so well, because she is getting what she needs finally. Right. It's sad that it's taken so long. And had they started from the beginning, I don't think it would have ended up this way. And I think it would have been a better prognosis earlier on. So because of their denying and lack of services for her, it escalated and exacerbated her condition to
created
extreme.
More problems, right?
So now we are where she is doing well. She's making academic gains. She is having social things going on for her that she's never had before. They sent her to the Wadiko summer camp. It's a therapeutic summer camp only for kids who have reactive attachment disorder. It's one of the only places in the country.
Nice.
And everybody from all over the country goes to this camp. They agreed to send her there last summer, and it was the catalyst. Like, it was exactly what she needed. So the end result is that, when they provided everything after we fought for years to get it, we do have, an end
right
at the end of,
There's
hope for
and you're
her.
not alone.
And we are not alone. We are not.
So can people get in touch with you?
Absolutely. If anybody has any questions, or if you feel like that something of this nature is going on for you, I would be more than happy to speak to you or try to help give information if I am able to, or point you in the right direction, tell you what you may need to do. My email address is dragonflies23@live.com.
Okay, and again, it's a reactive attachment disorder.
RAD.
RAD. And I really appreciate you coming on the show, Tiffany.
I very much appreciate you having me.
Yeah, and if you folks know somebody, or if you're struggling with this syndrome or this disorder, know that you're not alone. There are resources out there, and somebody that's probably plowed the way to get the services that they need.
Yes.
And support. Please contact speakupnh@gmail.com if you want to tell your story, or contact Tiffany, and we'll try to point you in the right direction. Thank you for watching this episode of Speak Up. We also want to thank our sponsor, Center for Redress of Grievances, LLC. You can reach them at www.centerforredress.com. If you want more information about Speak Up or want to be a guest, you have something to say, contact us at speakupnh@gmail.com. And thanks for watching. Until next week. Every day, citizens around the country are faced with new dilemmas that affect them profoundly. Whether it's injustice, discrimination, falling through the cracks, scandals and cronyism, balances of power, ethics, religious freedoms, state versus citizens, and unfunded mandates, and the list goes on and on and on. Welcome to Speak Up. It's directed at those who have fallen through the cracks, and it gives them a voice. It's your turn to speak up. To stand up and fight back.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.